My name's Daisy and I'm the Community Manager at Sussex Innovation Centre in Falmouth. And here today with me we have Mark, who is one of our members and owner of Human Workspace, and my colleagues Anne Fay, who heads up our research department here at the centre, and Saffron, who is our centre manager in Croydon. So today we are talking about Workspace Next. We are kind of gradually seeing people starting to make the move from working from home and back to different workplaces. Obviously, kind of the main thing before this move happened was making sure that workspaces were COVID secure. That was kind of the prerequisite for people to be able to return to work. But now kind of thinking ahead, but we've become quite familiar with the term the new normal, but now we're having to start thinking about what the next normal is. And the truth is that we don't really know. It's hard to predict, but kind of flexibility is going to be key for any workspace. So on that note, I'm going to pass you over to Faye.
Thank you, Daisy. Hello, everybody. Welcome. As Daisy very kindly said, I head up research at Sussex Innovation. A few weeks ago, we did a webinar looking at the great home working experiment when we all picked up our laptops and headed home. Some of us for the first time, some of us a return to normal, for some of us a big shock. And that webinar was very much about kind of what we'd learned from the great home working experiment. I think now we're looking for this webinar at some of the downsides of the great home working experiment, not least the fact that it doesn't actually affect everybody. It affects mainly knowledge workers, mainly people who are able to work from home. Recent data from the Resolution Foundation found that only 1 in 10 low earners, many of them women, are actually able to work from home. So whilst we're talking about a great home working experiment, it doesn't actually affect everyone, quite the opposite. If we do look at the people who've been working from home during this time, 38% of them have said that it's harder to strike a work-life balance when working remotely. So I think for lots of us, myself included, working at home has meant that those really nice divisions I used to enjoy between work and life, household, they've suddenly flattened. I was having a conversation with a colleague the other week, and I was saying, the weekend just feels like another day now. You know, the working week doesn't feel so well defined, and maybe that's not such a good thing. I really liked this quote in The Economist that said, without the Monday to Friday commute, the weekend seems a more nebulous concept, as does the 9-to-5 working day. In future, employees may work and take breaks when they please, with the company video call the only fixture. The downside, however, is that the rhythm of life has been disrupted and new routines are needed, as Madness, which very sweetly The Economist need to explain, or a British pop group, sang about school in baggy trousers. People are reduced to trying different ways to make a difference to the days. And I think that blurring is definitely something that I've found on an individual basis, but also that I'm speaking to colleagues and clients they're experiencing too. Also, we're obviously very interested in the advantages that office life and office space brings to how we work. And Octavius Black of the Mind Gym says that new ideas come from weak links. And that's something definitely we see at Sussex Innovation all the time. So the weak links and networks are the people that you meet occasionally. And obviously that can happen on a virtual basis, but also it happens on a physical basis. So it's really nice serendipitous meetings. So I really like this description that the Mind Gym have of casual collisions that come about and mean that maybe new ideas, new products, new innovations actually happen. So looking at the next normal, as Daisy put it, of the workplace, what do we think that's going to look like? Well, we know that the 9-to-5 has some advantages, but we think there's going to be less obsessive detail on it. Rather, we know that as people return to the office, rush hour is definitely going to be something that's avoided. So, for example, will offices start to go 24 hours like gyms do? We also think, with regards to what Octavius Black says, that the workplace will be a place for more meaningful interaction. So less of this, heads down, sitting on your computer with the headphones on, and more, I'm going into the office, I'm going to make it count. I'm going to talk to people, I'm going to collaborate, I'm going to make those interactions meaningful. And also, I think we'll just become, the social aspect of office life will be something that so many of us have missed, that I think we'll really start to see the value in that again. Technology will absolutely be the tool that brings us all together. So McKinsey envisages the next normal office space as being one of always on video conferencing, seamless in-person and remote collaboration spaces, such as virtual whiteboards. Don't ask me what that is, I don't know. I'll find out. And asynchronous collaboration and working models will quickly shift from futuristic ideas to standard practice. And we've certainly seen this already in the mass adoption of Zoom, which was pretty little known before this happened. And then again, to pick on Daisy's point, I think what we'll see more and more of is flex, flex, flex. In the near future, companies will use a portfolio of space solutions, own space, standard leases, flex space, co-working space, and remote work, as it starts to morph into office space that is designed to help with our kind of blended future of remote working and in-office working. So I thought at this stage it'd be useful for me to pass that to Daisy and to Saffron, who are our community managers at both Falmer and at Croydon, to talk through some of the things that we're doing to help our clients and members flex.
Thank you. I'm just trying to be clever and create a poll whilst you were talking. I'm just out of interest just to see from our attendees kind of where they're working at the moment, whether they're working in the back in the office or still working from home. So I'll launch that now. Well, I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. So I think we've always kind of prized ourselves about being flexible with our offering. I think Saffron will kind of speak to that in a moment.
I can't vote, no, I know.
Oh, sorry. So only attendees.
Yeah, I was rushing. Fair enough.
But yeah, so I think we've tried to become even more flexible with our offering, which is why I bought props for you today.
Oh, how
this week we have launched Sussex Stars. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah, that's very visible. That's very good. Hold it there, like.
Just hold it over my face, maybe. So the idea behind this is that although lots of people potentially are returning to the office, there are lots of companies that are saying that they're not going to be returning probably until at least next year. But there will be people out there who don't want to be working in their bedrooms anymore. And obviously, but as an individual wouldn't necessarily want to take out like a co-working membership with somewhere like Sussex Innovation. And so the idea is that people can purchase stars. And that enables them to come and use, each star is one hot desk in the co-working space for one day. Or the other option is that there's potentially lots of teams who are all working remotely, but do actually miss the face-to-face get-together. So then 5 stars can then be used for a team to get together and use a meeting room at either of our centres for a day. So at the moment, prop number 2, we're offering try before you buy complimentary 3-day passes for people to come and kind of see the space, kind of see how it's all set up, because obviously at the moment people might be feeling nervous about going and using a new space. That gives you the option to come in, take a look, have a desk for 3 days, and then potentially go on to use the Sussex Stars scheme. Some other things that we're kind of thinking about are the potentially having kind of a shared office set up, where companies who feel like they don't have the need for a permanent office, don't want to take kind of on a license agreement for a year, 2 years, whatever, can then share an office between some other companies, each company having their own day a week.
It's like a timeshare on an office. So
yeah,
whereas you'd usually have one company take on the license agreement, it might be 2 companies take on that risk, because it is a risk when you're taking on any kind of a commitment, bearing in mind that the terms are to give 3 months notice if anything goes wrong, but you can do that for like 2 days a week rather than 5 days a week. So yeah, we're just coming up with new, just to back Daisy up, new options to respond to the needs, the requests and the demand, the demands of the current climate. So.
But also what we're hearing more and more is we're hearing from people coming into the business that they feel, I'm experiencing from clients that I'm speaking to, real anger at some of the inflexibility that their existing landlords have shown. And I think some of that comes from the fact that their landlords are probably experiencing inflexibility from their landlords, but that doesn't mean it any more manageable for their business. A lot of, I think we're very fortunate in that we are able to give these flexible options where a lot of companies have been disappointed that they haven't been offered the terms that would help them get through, maybe.
Yeah, this is the shake-up for a massive sector, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
It's been real estate has been a very traditional way of selling office space in years gone by. And we were one step ahead of that with our own innovation, offering such flexible terms. And I think that all real estate is now going to have to make a big, quick U-turn and try and catch up with us, really. But in the meantime, we're ready, and we're ready to take new members, and we are taking new members. We lost lots of members at the beginning of lockdown, but just at the beginning of August, I've had 3 new companies move in this last weekend. So yeah, it's happening. People are coming back to work. People are concerned about their staff, concerned about people working from home. There's lots of people whose home situation isn't conclusive with working from home. It can be really good for a lot of people, but not for everybody. And I think, for large employers not to understand that or realise, I just think they're kind of missing the point, really.
Yeah, I think there's huge disparity in any business, I think, between, you experience the whole, because we're all peering into each other's homes now, aren't we? And there's a huge disparity between, say, for example, someone who's able to work from their own home office or from a spare room, even, to someone who's living in a shared house who can only work from their bedroom. And I think if you're in a scenario where you're living, working, sleeping in the same space continually, obviously that's not good for you.
Not healthy.
It's not healthy.
No, definitely not. So some of the other things that we've been looking at are kind of improvements to kind of our green travel offering. So we're looking at improving kind of the facilities for cyclists, because we're aware that being based in Falmouth is great if you drive. So we've got on-site car parking where we are. But if you don't drive like me, lots of people are still quite nervous about public transport. So kind of improving the cycling options and showering facilities and things like that is something that we're really looking into at the moment, kind of thinking about the next steps to get people back into the office.
But I think also we're really looking at because this is such a strange situation that we're starting to look at the things that we, I think, in the centres have always taken for granted because they're just manifestly there, and now realising what massive advantages they are. So, for example, I mean, I've always, rather tragically, talked a lot about our parking, because I think to have parking in Brighton is absolutely huge, because lots of places in parking in Brighton is apparently a nightmare. But also we do have access to wide open spaces, and we do have outside space. We're on the downs. These aren't necessarily things that I think pre-COVID, using us as an example, I don't think we necessarily would have talked about them that much, but now they're huge advantages to the workers coming back.
Yeah, people could go off and if people don't want to sit in a meeting room, cooped up together, if they're a bit nervous about that, you go and have a walking meeting in the Downs. Great, lovely. Take advantage of that.
Just don't get charged at by any cows or dive bombed by any seagulls. There's probably a health and safety briefing that comes along with that.
So I'm going to close the poll quickly now, just to see. So the majority of people, it looks like, are kind of doing that kind of flexible working.
Working from home and working from the office.
And working from the office, yeah. Which I think we're going to see a lot of that.
It's just both worlds, isn't it?
I think we're going to see a lot of that. The other thing that I've noticed, and thank you for the comments that you've put in that you've added already from the participants. It's really interesting seeing the movement there. So from people saying that they've given up their office because it was too expensive. We've also spoken to people who I've started describing as reluctant co-workers, who are people who have jobs in offices but have been told to kind of come back to the office 1 or 2 days a week. So have been flung into a home working situation that wasn't really of their choosing, and now they're looking for other options. And so a lot of those people are taking on co-working spaces, but they're absolutely really value orientated because it's not something that they've chosen. It's something that they feel like probably, and most of the time probably having to support it themselves rather than having their employer pick up the bill.
Sure. Shall we pass over to you now, Mark? So we've been kind of very much focused on offices, but not everyone works in an office or works from home. That's not kind of conducive to their job. So first of all, do you want to introduce yourself? All I've said is that you're Mark from Human Workspace.
Mark, the company's Human Workspace. We partner with mostly large manufacturing companies, Thales, Siemens, Nokia, those type of companies. So it's typically high technology manufacturing in factories is our forte. And what we do is we basically increase the productivity and efficiency of the facilities that the guys operate from. So it's everything from looking at Dave smacking a widget into a hole. Well, what's the best way for Dave to do that? Is he left-handed? Is he right-handed? Is he 5'4"? Is he 6'4"? Do the goods arrive from his left-hand side? Do the finished products go out to the right or vice versa? All of that kind of stuff. Just trying to build the most efficient and the most lean way for Dave to smack a widget in a hole. Moving on from that you can apply that kind of analysis to the whole of the facility, everywhere from goods in to finished product out. And it's basically, we're involved in designing out waste and designing in lean principles into manufacturing processes. Of course, I understand that that's, on the face of it, not strictly relevant to most of the attendees here, because I may be wrong, but I think mostly we're knowledge workers rather than manual workers or operatives or anything along those lines. But a lot of the theory is the same about excluding waste and about integrating processes together. So a lot of the things that we work on and have discovered during COVID and during the period leading up to COVID may well be of some kind of use to all the attendees. I don't know. I might be talking absolute rubbish. Let's see. You be the judge of that. I'm going to hide the comments for a while, just in case you are the judge of that and I don't like it.
Encouragement, go for it, Mark. We're real interested.
I think it's good. It's interesting to hear from a different perspective as well, isn't it?
But also cross category learnings are very important.
Absolutely. And at the end, really, we're all constrained by the fact that we've got two hands on two arms, generally speaking. We've got two legs. We're in a human form of some kind, and it doesn't really matter if what you're doing is physical work or knowledge work. Those constraints still apply. You need to probably be sitting, or you need to have somewhere to stand. You have certain hygiene requirements that have to be met, and those are all equally important in an office space as in a manufacturing workspace or a laboratory or anything along those lines. So I think a lot of the things that are happening in, let's call them factories for want of a better term, a lot of things that are happening in factories now and will be happening in factories over the next couple or few months as people start to return to work, I think they're going to have some kind of import when you're thinking about returning to work in an office as well. So bear with me. Some of this might seem totally off the wall and completely irrelevant, but I think if you maybe reflect on it at some point, perhaps there are points that you can use in your own processes as well.
Sure. Kind of from your client base, what are the specific challenges they faced during lockdown?
Well, really, they tend to fall into three different categories, and it kind of depends. It's sort of dictated by the nature of the work that we do, I guess. Of course, if we're talking primarily about factories. So, firstly, there are factories where basically they might be working on short-term contracts. So, I don't know, companies making industrial controls or machinery or something along those lines, where their customers have said, okay, guys, we don't need that anymore. Thank you very much, but we're not going to place any orders until we're back to work. So suddenly those guys find themselves with a workforce and a facility and expensive machinery that all has to be paid for, and of course no orders to generate the revenue to pay for all that expenditure. So that's a very real problem, and that's probably something that many of us, ourselves at Human Workspace included, are experiencing, because our own clients are waiting for their clients to come back, who are waiting for their clients to come back, who I think ultimately are waiting for a vaccine, or at the very least waiting for the kids to go back to school. There's some kind of relevance there, I think. One of the other problems that people are having is the kind of long-term contract companies. So if you're, I don't know, typically making aerospace or defense equipment or something along those lines, those projects might be spread over a 3-year period, and those deadlines and timeframes are still in place. But suddenly your guys can't come into work because they need to be socially distanced, or they need to isolate, or your facility isn't able to accommodate them in the way that it should do, and yet you've still got to meet those contracts. And it might be, we've got a couple of clients who are making parts for aeroplanes that are literally millions of pounds, and they're just kind of going, well, we can't make them. There is no way that we can make these. How do we deal with that? And then the third category, again within manufacturing, the third category of problem that we see is where demand has increased, and there aren't very many examples of that. But again, we've customers who make medical devices, who suddenly have been inundated with orders, parts for ventilators, parts for sanitization, hygiene, all of those kind of things. Suddenly these guys are inundated with orders, and yet they somehow have to meet those orders with half a workforce, because again, the facility is not big enough to accommodate their normal workforce. So those are the three kind of categories of problems that we see most often, and maybe those are also applicable to knowledge workers. I guess, of course, I'm a knowledge worker in the same way that most of the attendees are here. So I think you you can do whatever you like. I think it's a good idea to reflect on where you sit within those three categories whilst you're carrying about your own business. Is the answer to that question, Daisy? Thank you.
Remind me of the three categories you mentioned, Mark.
So I've been trying to think of some nice kind of pithy category titles, but basically we're looking at short-term contracts, long-term contracts, and high demand contracts. So just to recap, short-term, basically what that means is your orders have disappeared. Long-term means you've got orders that you need to fulfill, and high demand is you've got more orders than you would normally have. Pretty straightforward, really.
Yeah, I suppose the difference from working as in your example as factory workers, is that they need to be in a plant, they need to be in a construction line, whereas most knowledge workers can effectively work from home. And this is what it comes down to, is are people more productive when they're working from home, or are they more? I mean, I from my experience, I think we've all been just as productive working from home, if not even more so, because the distractions of life have been restricted. Obviously, family and so on has been put upon us if we have small children, but all the other distractions of that people couldn't trust their employees if they'd go, perhaps an insurance broker might employ a load of guys who might be off at the golf course if they got the chance, if they're working from home. They couldn't do that, could they? They were locked down, they were at home, they had to work, and productivity probably was just as good as it would have been if they were in the office. Their digital transformation, if us all talking to each other on Zoom all the time, we all have to be there, don't we? So I think productivity isn't an issue for knowledge workers, but I just think camaraderie and what did you call it earlier? casual collisions, Anne-Faye.
Casual
collisions of I would rename that banter, office banter. You know,
it's productive. Yeah. The kind of stuff, the stuff that just happens.
Yeah. And I think I've got quite a lot of friends who are working from home, working for larger organisations, and you can see they're just missing being with people. And if you're able to, if your employers have told you, you know, stay at home now, I want you to be at home, I think there's some people who've really enjoyed that, and they feel that, you know, they've been empowered. This is great. I don't have to commute. I'm saving so much time, and I'm as productive. However, they are missing the social interaction, and it's it's a big deal. I think, you know, as humans, we're not meant to be isolated. So lockdown wasn't healthy for any of us. You know, not being able to keep fit, not being able to talk to people, not being able to join all the clubs and extra activities that we might have gone to, whether that be art classes or just or physical classes, everything stopped. That can't be healthy for anybody. And I think that it's really important to be able to have the opportunity to come together with other people where you get the chance. So I think maybe we should refer to some of the comments that have been put in now. Should we look at some of those?
Because I thought that your productivity point is really important, Saffron, because I think this also applies to what Mark is saying, is I think for some people, I think there's two things going on. I think for some people that they have found that they've been really productive, but to Heather's point, I think there's a real risk of being, and I say this really carefully, but because I think my boss is on the call, but there's a real risk of being overproductive, of just ploughing through work. And I know that I was definitely guilty of that at the start of lockdown, because I was looking for something to hide in, and work was a really good place to hide from all the fear. Obviously that's still there, but it's not as severe. But I feel like we do need to be able to boundarize our work. And when you work from home, you can just go hell for leather on productivity and actually realize that you haven't taken a break, or you haven't taken lunch, or you haven't actually spoken to somebody, you've just been working. The other thing that can happen is, as Rick highlighted, is that so Rick has said that, if you don't mind me reading this out, several clients that are downsizing their very large office spaces now that people can work remotely, they're having difficulties being able to manage remote teams. And this is a huge issue that I think probably Mark can speak to really well, because managing huge teams, not remotely, but overseeing a factory, is essentially, and making sure that all the people in that supply chain and all the people in that factory are doing the job that they need to do when they need to do it, is essentially where we are all now, of making sure that those moving parts of the business are doing the things that they need to be doing, rather than at the golf course, or actually really, I think what is more likely the case, showing positive intent, that some people do really struggle to be self-starters, and that some people do need managing, and they do need looking after, and they do need helping. And I think, we've got all these digital tools, which is great, but it's a skill implementing them, and it's a skill learning how to use them, and it's a skill directing people that I think is very underestimated at the moment. Would you agree, Mark?
Absolutely. I think it's a two-way street. The skill being able to properly implement all those management tools, and in return, there's a certain discipline required on the part of anybody that's working remotely, when you're, so as Saffron was saying earlier, what we're talking about, when we're talking about manufacturing stuff, you can't make a tractor in your back bedroom. That's not going to happen.
Or you probably shouldn't.
No,
Don't try.
Probably not. But what we're finding, let's say, tractor manufacturers are doing is, over the last few months, they've been subcontracting their manufacturer a whole load more. And that means they need to manage their subcontractors. They need to produce systems and processes to manage their subcontractors, and their subcontractors need to adopt a certain kind of quality standard that they might not have previously used, because it's unique to the tractor manufacturer. And I know that all sounds a bit weird and slightly abstract compared to working from home, but actually, if you relate that, what we would be doing as employers is subcontracting to our employees at remote sites in the same kind of way.
Yes, that's what we're doing, and we presume that it's all just going to work. I think
so those tools that are being developed by tractor manufacturers and aircraft manufacturers and whatever else will trickle down very, very quickly, and will be available to anyone who's managing a remote team of home workers. and that, you know, the theory is already in place and it's well proven, and it's, you know, it's not rocket science at all. The digital tools, you know, MRP, ERP systems are all, you know, they exist. They're relatively expensive because the market for those is predicated on large scale manufacturers. I think what we'll see over the next few weeks and months is that those tools will become more available far more cheaply because there's more of a demand for them, simply because people are more involved in managing remote teams than they have been previously. So I think it's difficult and it's daunting, but you can bet your life that there's probably people at the Sussex Innovation Centre that are already developing the software tools and apps that you'd be required to use to manage your teams remotely. And I think, you know, it will happen very quickly. And the acceleration of those management systems is, you know, is kind of bewildering, really.
I think at the start of lockdown, I always get the numbers wrong, but it was something like Microsoft obviously never want to miss an opportunity. We're talking about how, with regards to the adoption of things like SharePoint, they reckon they'd seen 2 years worth of digital transformation happen in 2 months because people just had to start doing it.
Sure.
And we've started using something called Harvest as well, haven't we? Which is tracking, so it's time tracking, which we haven't done before, but I think it's really relevant now to see productivity wise who, yeah, because I know I have nothing to hide. I'm filling my time. I'm very busy. And I do sometimes wonder about some of my colleagues, present members obviously excluded.
I'm not sure you can say that.
But I think what's really interesting about
I'm only joking.
But what's so great about tracking productivity, because I've started really, sorry, did you see a doll fly through the air?
What? A doll?
Obviously being removed. I'm beginning to regret removing my virtual background now. That's why I have it. That's completely thrown me.
Well, no, I think the whole the comment. I think
tracking productivity.
Yeah.
It's really good to be able to see what you're spending your time doing versus what you're actually, you know, to go back to the point of kind of manufacturing, you know, what's brilliant about making stuff is that at the end of the day, you've got a tractor, right? At the end of the day, you've got a tractor. Sometimes when you're a knowledge worker, you spend a whole day, you know you're doing something, you've got nothing to show for it. You're like, why is that?
That's why I'm really enjoying it, actually, because I'm actually like, wow, that's what I've been doing all day.
Yeah, I've been spending all day doing this and not that. Or that's how much of that I need to do this. And that's the other thing that's really, really helpful about it as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to develop and identify those metrics. Otherwise, you know, you don't know what you're measuring, you don't know if you're achieving. And again, it's a two-way street. As an employer, you need to create those metrics. As an employee, you need to monitor yourself all the time against those metrics. And people don't do that always.
And it's really important to have that mindset about it, because if you think it's a tool for yourself and it's helping yourself, you won't feel angry about it. And I can see that some people will not like, you know, we do a 9 o'clock huddle 3 days a week, and I love the 9 o'clock huddle. I know I've got to be at my desk with them, not so much now, but when we were at real lockdown, when I was at home full time, on the days that we had the 9 o'clock huddle, I felt so much more motivated and so much more, you know, in so much better intention to get to my desk for 9 o'clock. For 2 days we didn't have it, not so able to do that. So it helped me. Whereas other people might not feel that it helps. They might feel, I'm being watched, I'm being, you know, they're checking up on me and they're making me do something. And it's not a great philosophy to have. You've really got to see it as a positive thing for yourself to help yourself along. So having time management skills, although some people might say, I'm being checked up on and, you know, I feel like I'm being watched all the time. It's not to feel like that is not going to help you. You've really got to feel like this is helping me manage my time. This is helping me do my job properly and feel better about the way I'm working. So it's just really about your mindset and how you feel about the job you're doing and your loyalty to your employers, really, I think.
Yeah, I think there is a clearly there's a key change in thought. So if Dave goes into the factory and his job from 9 to 5 is smacking 10,000 widgets into a hole, which are then, I don't know, in some way become part of a tractor. So he has that mindset. So I've got from 9 to 5 to do 10,000 widgets, and that's what he does. Perhaps in the coming months, he's going to be tasked with bashing 10,000 widgets into a hole in your own time, so long as at the end of the week or the end of the month, whenever it is, at some finite date, you've bashed 10,000 widgets into a hole. It really doesn't matter when you've done them. You don't have to do them from 9 to 5. You can get up at 11 and go to bed at midnight, but work all that time, so long as you bash the widgets in the hole. And I think, again, knowledge workers, when those metrics are in place, it's really easy in the manufacturing context to set those metrics. You need to bash 10,000 widgets into a hole. If you're a knowledge worker, it's more difficult to evolve those metrics. But I think when we do, then people will feel much better about being able to manage their time.
And we're already learning that from manufacturing. So I think things like Slack, which I'm a big fan of, and other people in the business not so much. But what Slack enables me to do is work asynchronously. And what you're talking about with the gentleman hitting the widgets into the holes, that's asynchronous working. So it's, it doesn't matter when you do this, you have to do it, and you have to do it by a set time. So if, for example, like myself, you're trying to manage work around, and I say trying because I'm still trying. I'm not sure if I'm prevailing. Trying to manage work around the needs of small children, hence soul flying through air. Asynchronous working actually really helps with that, not least because I can do things like I can do things like work before the children wake up. Now the impact, that's brilliant for me, but when I started working like that, I had to give a heads up to my colleagues that I was working like that, because I work with a lot of people who are at the start of their career who might get understandably completely freaked out by getting emails and Slack messages from me at 6 a.m. in the morning when they open up their computer at 9. Because the signal that it sends is, wow, I'm sending emails at 6, because we have to shift our behaviors and our attitudes around how we work with each other. And I hope really clear, I am not sending you emails at 6 a.m. I'm not slacking you at 6 a.m. because I expect you to respond. That's my golden hour that I can do that kind of stuff. And that's why it's coming through. I'm working asynchronously, and I need you to recognize, I need you to recognize that. And this is not about me making, checking in on you or presenteeism, quite the opposite. So it's our behaviors, but also how we signal them.
Yeah, so it's really about setting deadlines more than anything, isn't it?
And signaling. I think signaling is the single most important part of it, is I'm doing this because, and that's what manufacturing is really good at, I feel, because in manufacturing, if you don't signal to people clearly about stuff, they get run over by pieces of machinery or lose their hands, So the signaling and communicating is very, very key.
How do we feel about rewards against those metrics? So Dave is smacking 10,000 widgets in a hole. If he smacks 10,000 widgets in 10,000 holes, at the end of the month, he gets £1,000. If he smacks 500, he gets £500. Maybe, repeatedly, if he's only doing 500, then there's another conversation to be had. But how does that work with people who are knowledge workers or working remotely, developing apps or something? Is that it's something that we're seeing fairly commonly in manufacturing environments. It's basically metric contracts, they're called. So
so that's set up at the start of the employment if it's a metrics contract, isn't it? Yeah. So that may be something that, we've got I think I saw Monica on the call. Is Monica still there? Yeah, Monica, you're still there, aren't you? Do you want to answer that one? Because we're all employed, and we were all employed on full-time contracts. So I suppose moving forward in this new world, if people are going to be employed and be working remotely, that would be a different kind of contract altogether. And Monica is our HR manager, so she can't speak to us, but she could answer that question on the chat. Is that right, Daisy?
Yeah, well,
not to put you on the spot or anything, Monica.
What did we call it? What did you call it? It's a metrics contract, and that's used quite a lot.
Metrics contract. I guess you have that as a knowledge worker if you have things like that you have targets that you have to meet, but also KPIs I mean, KPIs is classically what you're given as a knowledge worker, is that these are the KPIs that you need to deliver against in order for us to see that you're doing your role. But interestingly, it's like when I first came into the workforce 5 years ago, there was KPIs were kind of all the rage. And what's really interesting is that they've fallen off as a metric. And I kind of wonder if the financial crisis has something to do with that. It seems to be there's definitely a before and after with regards to KPIs. But also I think in knowledge, it is very different to whacking a widget into a hole when you're a knowledge worker whose output can be sometimes quite abstract, unless you're in something like sales. So for example, for Saffron and Daisy, you have units as part of your roles, you have discernible units that you have to sift. The other part of what we do at the Sussex Innovation is we market and sell research, which is a bit more of an abstract concept, to say the least. So it varies on what you're selling. But I do think, broadly speaking, I think KPIs can be really, really healthy because they have, as long as they're reasonable, there's something that people have to work towards.
But you see, it is hard to measure what we do because there's so much variety in what we do. And we've always had quite a lot of autonomy, and we're all able to, we all really care about it, I think. So everybody's really, really, gets on with it. And I think in this climate, you need to show that you care, don't you? Really? That's my philosophy anyway. So
I think there's a happiness KPI, isn't there? And I think that's very important. I feel that talking to kind of friends and contacts and clients who work in other businesses, I feel that for those employees who come through this, a lot of them will reflect on how their relationship with their business was through it.
100%.
And I think rightfully there's a focus on businesses that have nurtured their employees through this versus employers who have not.
I was thinking about that. I had a week off last week, and I think that's what's really important as well, to take some holiday during this period. Because although I was on holiday and not thinking about work, it did give me some time to reflect on this 4-month period and how we've all supported each other so much. We see each other's faces more than I see my family's faces, more than I've seen anyone else's face, my colleagues. So, and it's been very lucky to be part of a larger organisation where there is that camaraderie and that support. And we've all gone through a massive trauma really together, haven't we? We've all coped with a global pandemic, for goodness sake. So well, I'm sure we will all go back and remember each other wherever we go in the future, but we'll always remember this time, won't we?
Yeah. I think, well, it's like kind of, God knows those of us who've got parents who lived through the war, they never forgot that experience. And this is on a, I'm not being melodramatic without saying that. I kind of often think now when I look at my children, it's like kind of, this is in lots of ways, this will be their world war. Certainly the ramifications for their futures and for the economy and for society are enormous. So yeah, I think, at a company level, Daddy, what did you do during the war? No, it's not a bad thing for, I think, employers to reflect on. What did you step up? Did you support your employees? I think it's really vital.
And I think also what's vital is how were you with your employees during the crisis, and how well did you plan for after the crisis? And I think that's really important. And typically smaller companies such as ours, we've battened down the hatches, we're scraping through. It's very difficult to plan for something that you don't fully understand. And we don't, I don't think any of us have a real clear idea of what the business landscape's going to look like in 6 months or a year's time. And it's really hard to make those plans.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we do still need to have some kind of milestones that you can apply, and they probably need to be fairly flexible. But I don't think it's enough to say we're just going to kind of scrape along and see what happens.
And it's been very interesting watching quite a few of our clients and members I've observed in the crisis took some really hard decisions. They took really, really hard decisions, but they are now well equipped to continue because they did that. They took some really brave and courageous decisions that would have been really, really difficult to do, but they did it, and they're still here.
Yeah, sure. Again, one of the trends over the last few months in manufacturing industries is taking on short-term subcontractor contracts. So Again, if you're making tractors, typically you'd make them all in house. You know, you'd make them. I don't know, the tire. You wouldn't make the tires. You'd make the wheels. You make the engines, whatever else. Perhaps what those type of companies are doing now is subcontracting more of that, but managing those subcontractors far more closely than they would have done previously. And it may only be on a week by week basis. So this week, company X is making the gearboxes. Next week, company Y might be making the gearboxes, but they're going to be managed by the principal company. And I think in terms of, you know, let's call them knowledge workers again. I think that there could well be some movement towards that in the future, insofar as instead of having a company of 6 people or 20 people or 50 people, you'll have a company of 2 or 3 people and many contractors that work for you on a shorter term basis, who you manage far more closely than you've done previously. And
some of them will be robots.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a really big. I don't want to scare anybody. I feel that is a really big threat. Very interestingly, before the crisis, I remember having a conversation about one of our members who were downsizing their office, and they weren't downsizing their office because they were losing money. Quite the opposite. They were downsizing their office because they could afford to automate, and they didn't need as many people.
Mm.
So it's really interesting. I read a really nice piece in The Economist actually just today about automation, and interestingly, some people think that whilst the crisis was going to accelerate automation, there's an opposing view that actually it might put the brakes on it, because there's going to be so much more labour available that actually the human factor will come back to the fore, because robots are very expensive to design and develop and produce.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody needs a job.
Strangely enough, we just prior to COVID, we signed a distribution agreement with a manufacturer of industrial cobots, and we've been talking to our clients about, you know, if you need, you know, have you thought about cobots? The cobots that we're talking about are typically 10 grand a pop or something like that, whereas previously they might have been 100 grand, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago. So it's a much more cost-efficient way of putting baked beans into tins, or smacking widgets into holes. Indeed, you know, you can replace Dave with a cobot, and the cobot's going to smack widgets in holes all day. But over the last 2-3 months, since we signed this distribution agreement, whenever we've spoken to potential clients, they've said, "I think we'll use people because there's going to be a lot of them about." So.
Yeah.
You know,
so that's interesting. So that's the anecdote that proves the hypothesis.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So I kind of, you know, I think human beings, you know, hopefully will come back to the form, because I think certainly before the crisis, automation was a very serious, massive threat. But it doesn't seem to have come to pass for this reason.
Well, I think that, like Helen has put in a little comment about the Catalyst team, and I think this is why the Catalyst team and other agencies, I suppose, you know, subcontracting work has always been happening. But our Catalyst program, if anyone doesn't know about it, is such a successful program, and we're really trying to expand it across South London at the moment. We employ a group of graduates from the University of Sussex every year. They're on a 1-year contract with us, and during that 1-year contract, they get the opportunity to work with lots of other different companies, members and not necessarily members. So anyone, particularly at the moment, who has projects that they need some bright young things to come along and help on, these young people from many different disciplines at university, and they're really able to work and dig deep into your projects on a very flexible sort of, you know, hourly if you need it, just a morning a week if need be. It's really flexible. They're all looking for something to add to their CV when they look for a real job after 12 months. And it's a really good...
But also they've got jobs with us. So quite often we plant them with our members.
Yeah, they are. So they're often employed by us at the end because we're able to grow, or they're employed by our members. But they're often employed in sectors they haven't even heard of before, and they learn so much through that period. And it's really good for an entrepreneur or for a small business, because they're not taking too much risk by employing the young person. We take all the risk. They're fully resourced through us, but they're also able to talent spot, so they could build a relationship, build a rapport with somebody. It might not work out. It doesn't matter. You know, the next they could try with somebody else. And it's a really good way of talent spotting and finding somebody that you can mentor and sort of shaped your way of thinking. But I've been with the Innovation Centre for 5 years now, and this is my 6th intake, and it's brilliant. I just absolutely love it. I really, really want to expand. Yeah. It's not done in many other organisations or anywhere. It's always an internship, a full-time internship. And if you're a small business looking for someone to help you with marketing with no experience of marketing, how are you going to make sure that works? It's such a great flexible offering. So there's my little pitch for Catalyst.
I have more to add. We did the training for Team 7 last week, and I was saying to them that Helena and I were both saying to them that they also have an innate value as individuals and as people at the start of their careers. And you see that in their interactions with clients and members all the time. I mean, brilliantly, a member of the Catalyst team who's since been promoted to marketing coordinator, working with me. She sat in a meeting with a client and she said, "I'm your customer. In 10 years' time, I'm your customer." And the client was like, "Oh God!" And you see, it was a real moment of insight for the client, because they had not thought in those terms, because you're so focused as an entrepreneur or a business owner on the here and now. And when my colleague said, "I'm your customer in 10 years' time," she was really like, "Oh God, that I hadn't thought about that, and I need to think about this whole cohort that's now coming through." It was really valuable for her. And that demonstrates the kind of just innate value that a team have, not only in their own life experience, but also the fact that they're coming into the workforce now, and we can learn so much from them.
Yeah, it's really good.
I'm just Monica's responded regarding KPIs, but I don't think it's visible to everyone. So I'm just going to jump in and quickly read out what she's put.
Yes, thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Monica. Sorry to have put you on the spot.
It was me, sorry.
In knowledge work, KPIs are essential and should relate to outputs, not too dissimilar to manufacturing or other industries. They should be linked to business strategy, understanding the key outputs, quality measures. Oh. And I've just had a Slack message which is covering up the rest of the text.
I'll read it. And can you read it? Define them. So I think she's basically just agreeing, that I don't think. Do you think things will change, Monica, moving forward in this new world as new contracts are created? I suppose it depends if companies are planning on keeping their staff at home, and I think some companies are. Some companies have seen productivity just as good, and they're planning on having a full remote working team. So I expect contracts will have to change, won't they? But this is where the Innovation Centre is so relevant. And today here in Croydon, we're really seeing old members coming back because they're needing somewhere to drop into, which is more COVID compliant than a coffee shop. Yeah, so people who have moved into offices in central London, they're not going there anymore. They're just having occasional meeting in coffee shops, but they don't want to go to a coffee shop. So coming to a space which is COVID compliant, they can be network members and pay just, as little as £45 a month, and be part of a community to drop in and have your own space in. It's just that flexibility is really, really relevant and popular, I think, and we don't really need to change too many of our offerings to be able to comply to what's needed at the moment.
On
I
that
think that's a really important point. Sorry, just really quickly, just before really quickly. I do think that's a really important point, because I asked both Daisy and Saffron prior to this to before the webinar, say, tell me what it is that we've done to kind of change this new situation. And both of you, bless you, kind of just went,
don't need to.
Yeah, we're already there.
It's been a really good selling point for us. We're really flexible. Our terms are really appealing, and we can be more flexible if we need to be. So we're able to do that, and that's what a lot of landlords are not able to do. The real estate, we've been number one Croydon for 5 years, and there's empty floors in this building. We've had teams that have grown so quickly, they've had to move out of our space and into their own space. And we've tried to speak to the building about a more flexible terms on a 3rd floor. And they just go, no, it's the whole floor or nothing. And it's a full stop on the conversation.
That's not going to wash anymore, is it?
Not going to wash anymore. And that's a really good thing. So I think that this is going to shake up that sector, and there'll be repercussions completely right the way through, which will hopefully be better for everybody in the long term. Oh, Monica's answered again. Daisy, do you want to take that?
I interrupted Daisy, that was my fault. Sorry, Daisy.
Well, I was actually going to say that I'm quite aware of time, and I know that Helena wants to jump on, because we've talked quite a lot about kind of our membership offering, but we haven't really touched so much on business support.
I've got my first person using Sussex Stars here today.
Have you?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So let me just promote Helena to panelist. If she's there. Yay.
I get this like ding dong Avon calling kind of noise when you put me on.
It's exciting.
we didn't get to hear it. That would have been good.
Sorry?
So I'd have bought a face powder from you.
So thanks for that. So thank you very much. It's been really lovely to hear all the insight and stuff. Who's there using Sussex Stars, Saffron? Because that's something we haven't talked about, and that's one of our responses has been informed by what members want in terms of our flexible offering. So it's really good to hear that's being bye Jenny. It's really good to hear that that's being used. So yeah, I mean, we always try to be informed by insight and informed by what people in our organisation want. And so with regards to that, what we have done is we've tried to become even more flexible in understanding our business's needs at this time, because that's what we've recognised that you guys need. So Sussex Stars is one of the ways that we've done that. So that enables you to have a series of tokens, which we've called stars, to come and use the office on a flexible basis. So maybe you need a meeting room once a week for your team rather than an office all the time, or maybe you want to bring a couple of people to the office. So if you're more interested in that, I know Daisy's already mentioned it, then you can come and talk to us about that. We're also looking at maybe you need an office for 1 day a week and could possibly share that office with other people. And we also, I think the other thing that's been touched on a lot is, you know, nobody yet knows what this is going to pan out looking like. And so one of the things that we've launched to support businesses at this time is a series of consultancy products, which we can fund at the moment if you need them, if you want to have a chat with us about any of the themes that have come out with this, in terms of the kinds of themes, again, that members are telling us are top of their minds at the moment, whether that's, you know, a managing cash flow issue, whether that's a properly understanding your consumer and how your consumer has changed out of this issue, whether that's how you're going to staff on a flexible basis moving forwards. So if you've got any interest in any of those products, they're called our Lead Out of Lockdown products, and they're on our website. And I would imagine, but I'm not sure, that Daisy might be dropping a link into them at some point. But again, get in touch with us if you're interested in those. And then again, you know, the read that we're getting is it's all about flexibility at the moment, and probably will be until the end of the first quarter, middle of next year, because people don't know where this is going to land, don't know where it's going to come out. So we're all about supporting people in any way we can with that flexibility. And the Catalyst team, as Saffron's already mentioned, is another way that businesses are recognising we can do that for them. So, you know, if you need an extra pair of hands, or you need a piece of strategic work doing on a flexible basis, our Catalyst team, in conjunction with some of our more senior consultants, can do that for you in a really effective way, without you needing at the moment to commit to new permanent staff. So again, it's all about, we want to serve you guys at the moment with that maximum flexibility need, and so everything we're doing is orientating around us being able to do that for you. So that's all I wanted to say, really, and just say thank you to everybody who's been on, because again, it's been great content, so thank you.
Eleanor, yeah, thank you so much, everyone who joined us today. Thank you to our panel, particularly Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Next week,
Daisy.
we're going to be talking about psychology behind branding. So I'll drop the link for next week's webinar in there for anyone who would like to join us for that. I think I'll just say goodbye. Hopefully see you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.